Looks like you're live.
Greetings, everybody out there on the interwebs. Repeat and Fig here with Butch. We're about to go live, tell you a story or two. Hope your Sunday afternoon's going well. Sorry,
go
it's
Chiefs.
Early
Go
game time.
Chiefs.
Yeah, well, there's that. It's early game time for you folks. Looks like even the Patriots, Patriots won one yesterday, Thursday.
Yeah, it was a fluke.
Navy, however, had a bad day.
It was so close.
They gave themselves every opportunity to win, and it was a good game.
So close.
It was a good competitive game. All right.
There was a chant at that game. Did you catch that on the interwebs?
I did not.
Well, you'll have to check it out. I don't want to say it here.
Okay.
It was a pretty big chant, stadium-wide. I couldn't believe it, for a military academy crowd.
Really?
Something to do with Brandon.
Oh. Again, my favorite race car driver. All right, lads. Shall we? We shall. And all I got to do is find out how to do this. It's like I've done it before. I lost my, I didn't lose it. I left it home. My board, my soundboard. So I'm having to do it manually. Here we go, guys. Give me a couple seconds to zero everything out. I hear you.
That's about the right
I hear you.
beat, isn't it?
Yep.
Quiet, numbskull. We're broadcasting.
It's coming your way. Shh. I need you to stop so I can start.
Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond
When?
at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
Hello, fellas. Thanks for having me. My name is Butch Rutt. Live in Littleton, Colorado.
Yeah, but where were you?
So there I was.
There I
was.
There I was in the North Pacific.
Do you mind if we restart that? I'm sorry.
No.
That's how we want you to start. So there I was.
Oh, okay. So there I was. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to restart that.
Sorry.
No worries.
Okay.
That way I can cut off the front end of this. So here we go. Coming at you again. We'll just do the music this time.
Okay.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
So there I was. I was a P-3 patrol plane commander. We were in the North Pacific, about 1,000 miles south of Shimia, on an anti-submarine warfare mission, about 3 o'clock in the morning. And we were down low, prosecuting the Russian sub, and we had smoke in the tube.
Ooh.
So when that happens, you activate the fire bill, and every crewman in the back has duties, items to check, and they couldn't find what was burning. The smoke was getting thick, and at that time, I had a couple of options running through my head. None of them were really good. One was to climb and depressurize the cabin, which would have induced oxygen in, which could make the fire worse. The other option was to ditch the airplane in the North Pacific. But wintertime North Pacific, you're looking at 20, 30-foot swells, 70-knot winds. The last time it was done was in, I think, 1978. A P3 ditched, and the rumor back then was all the married crew members survived and all the single guys died. And I didn't have any reason not to believe that. So at the time, they couldn't find the source, smoke's getting thick. And I remember reaching up under the glare shield for the ditching checklist thinking, son of a bitch, I wish I was married. And at that time, they found the source. It was an overheated hydraulic pump. Pulled the breakers. We climbed up, did the smoke evacuation checklist, and we headed back to Adak, Alaska. And we made
And that is how all great aviation tales begin.
Well, then,
Wait.
let me follow that up.
1,000 miles from nowhere.
What the hell?
Yeah, well, let me follow that up with years later, there was a book written called Adak, The Rescue of Alpha Foxtrot 586 by a guy named Andy Jompler, who was the base CO at Moffett. And the P3 that ditched was attached to a squadron at Moffett. They were operating out of Adak, Alaska. And he wrote a book. It's an awesome book. Come to find out, not all the married guys survived and not all the single guys died. So
Well,
So
there
that
you
was a
have it.
vicious rumor.
Yeah.
it was a vicious rumor at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Well, greetings, everybody. Repeat here, coming to you from Seoul, Korea today. So, greetings. And got my co-host, Fig. Where are you head? Where are you sitting today?
Yes, sir. I'm in Kearney, Missouri, just outside Kansas City. It's Kansas City Chiefs game day. They're hosting the Buffalo Bills here in a couple hours. Yeah. But more importantly, I want to welcome our guest, Butch. And that's how you start a story right there. My palms are sweating a little bit. You said low altitude. How low?
We were probably, if I remember, that was a couple of weeks ago. We were probably less than 1,000 feet.
At
Well,
3
that'll get
o'clock
your
in the
attention.
morning, out over the water, no lights. That's crazy
yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
So you weren't nowhere, but you could see it from there, huh?
we were right next door to it. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, because there's all that help just hanging around out there 1,000 miles out in the North Pacific, ready to help you guys out when things go to crap, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I was on my third deployment. We did 6-month deployments. I did 2 to Japan. And then this was my last one. We were stationed in Adak, which is a little island on the Aleutian chain that used to connect Alaska and Russia. And
right.
it's like halfway out there. It separates, the Aleutian chain separates the North Pacific from the Bering Sea. And it was a not fun environment to be in. But
That's
that's
treacherous environment.
Mhm.
Varsity every day is varsity.
Right. Exactly. But let's back up though a little bit, because you didn't start off life as a P3 pilot. In fact, I would say among all our guests, you're one of the more circuitous routes to get yourself
The hell
into.
was that term you just used?
That's a big word.
That's your 50-cent word of the day, folks. Circuitous. Go look it up.
I
We'll put
don't
it
even
in the
know what
glossary.
the hell that means. Repeat. I am going to have to look that up.
That's a lot of syllables for a Marine.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Especially for someone who might have, I don't know, dropped out of high school. Get us back to how you got there.
Yeah,
how you got
does
here
that-
from there.
This is a good story. Let's hear this one.
Yeah.
I did. My parents got divorced when I was about eight or 10, and I
Okay.
have 3 sisters. My mom was a stay-at-home housewife. So when my dad left, she worked 3 jobs, 7 days a week, supporting 4 kids. We moved out of the house and moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. And at the time, since I was the only boy, I got my own bedroom. And then as soon as I turned 16, I quit high school and moved out so my mom could have her own room. And back then, my passion was cars. I always wanted to own a gas station back then.
All
I got a job at a gas station, worked a couple different gas stations for a few years, got a job at a Datsun dealership. Datsun, that's pre-Nissan.
Yeah, that
Right.
pre-Nissan. Yeah, man. The Datsun B210, the 510.
240Z.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
pretty hot car back then, man.
Yeah, so I worked at a dealership for a while. Started taking flying lessons again. early when I was a little bitty kid, my dad got me some intro flights at the little Cessna Center at Stapleton Airport. $5 intro flights. They had to put blocks on the rudder pedals for me so I could touch them. And I always loved it. And then he left, and that kind of went away for a while. But then I started taking flying lessons again, and probably the turning point for me was I was working at a Phillips 66 gas station, and I write about this guy, and I can't remember his name, but he was a retired dentist, and he would come in the station like one Saturday a month, bring his cars in, and have me change the oil and look at the brakes, rotate tires, and bring donuts and coffee, and always beat me to the station before I opened up. He helped me open up, and one morning we're sitting on the workbench, and he said, "Butch, what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to rotate your tires, check your brakes, and change your oil."
I'm doing it.
And he said, "No, that's not what I'm talking about." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Are you going to work in gas stations your whole life?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "What do you want to do?" He said, and I said, "I want to be a Navy pilot." And he said, "You should do that." And I said,
Right.
"You need a college degree. I don't even have a high school diploma." And the old guy looked at me and he said, "Then you've got a lot of work to do." And that stuck in my mind for about a year and a half. And then I'm working at Datsun. And I went down to the community college and asked the lady about a GED. And she said, "Well, yeah, you can sign up for classes. Have you taken the test?" And I said, "No." She said, "Well, take the test. And if you pass, then you get it." I said, "When can I take the test?" She said, "Right now." And I think that was, I have it around here somewhere. That was sometime in 1979.
Okay.
20 years old, and I took the GED test and passed, and continued with flying lessons and started college down at Metro in downtown Denver as an aerospace science major. Graduated in 2.5 years. In the meantime, I'd talked to a Navy recruiter and had signed up for AOCS, provided I graduated by a certain date. So I had to graduate in 2.5 years, so I overloaded a bunch of semesters, 20, 22 credit hours a semester.
And that was because, Butch, you were bumping up on age restriction, right?
I was bumping up on age restrictions for the military, and I was bumping up on age restrictions that I put on and for my life, you know.
Okay,
like I knew that if I was still turning wrenches by the time I was in my late 20s, I was always going to be turning wrenches.
Yeah.
Because windows start to close.
Right.
So, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with turning wrenches, but man, when you want to fly airplanes,
Yeah,
you go, I woulda, coulda, shoulda, and I never took my shot. So wow,
Yes.
good on you.
So I got my private instrument and commercial rating, and graduated from college August of '83, and September 15th of 1983, I found myself in Pensacola, Florida, with Gunny Go.
How about that?
Yeah.
Semper Fi, do or die.
That started the whole ball rolling, man, and it was crazy. We started out with an AOCS class of 86, and I think 34 of us got commissioned. And then after that, probably a little over half of us after that actually got wings. So the attrition rates were high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so you selected props out of flight school. And where did you go to flight? Where did you go to primary and intermediate and all that?
I was a VT2 guy at Whiting Field in Florida, just right outside of Pensacola.
Yep.
For primary, and I finished at the top of my class. So I actually got drafted for jets. And at the time, I'd been corresponding with Jungle, Jim Ross, who was a Blue Angel.
Now, how was that connection made before, when you were in, how did you meet Jungle?
In the real early 80s, 80, 81, 82, 83, the Blue Angels used to come to Loveland Fort Collins Airport every year and perform.
Okay.
Loveland Fort Collins is like 60 miles north of Denver. And I met him at an air show when I was in college and started talking to him. And he was such a nice guy, and we just kind of clicked. And so I would write to him, and he actually wrote me back a couple of times. and it was really something. I mean, those guys have power that I think a lot of them don't understand, as far as being able to influence people and kids, you know. But he was very inspiring and very encouraging.
Yeah, but the fact that he's corresponding with you,
Yes.
right? I mean, these guys meet
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of people a year at air shows,
Yes.
and he is corresponding with you.
Yes.
That's pretty outstanding.
Isn't
right?
that cool? That's Jungle in a nutshell, man. He just,
And I'm
when he
gonna
saw
tell
someone was interested, he would spend all the time in the world with them.
Oh, and I'm going to tell you, as a kid, as a college kid, when you come home and you open up the mailbox, and there's an envelope with your name on it, and it's got the Blue Angel logo on it. It's
that's
like, it doesn't get any better.
listen, man. If that doesn't put lead in your pencil, nothing would.
Right?
Right? Holy
And the only
shit!
other real cool experience I had was when I was in college. I read Baba Black Sheep,
Yeah.
Pappy
Yeah.
Bullington.
Yep.
And so I've always been not afraid to call people. So in the back of the book I had, it said Pappy resides in Fresno, California. So one night I called Fresno information, 411, and I asked for Gregory Bowington in Fresno, and I got a phone number. And so I called it, and a lady answered. And I said, "Hi, my name's Butch Rutt, and I'm a college kid in Denver, and I was wondering if I could speak with Mr. Bowington." And she said, "Well, he's not here right now." I said, "Okay." I said, "When do you expect him back?" She said, "I don't know, 2 or 3 days. He's out drunk somewhere."
Oh shit!
And so I said, "Okay." So like 4 or 5 days later, I call again, and she answers, and I said, "Hi, this is Butch Rutt again. Is Mr. Bowington in?" She said, "Yes, he is." "Greg." And so he answers the phone, and we talked for like 45 minutes. He was so
No way.
cool.
No way.
He was so
That is outstanding.
that's awesome.
but yeah, anyway, that's how I met Jungle.
Okay.
And he was a super nice guy. And then years later, when I wrote my book, I contacted him, and he wrote on the back for me a little blurb. But so yeah, I mean, I finished primary, and I was at the top of my class. I was drafted to go Jets. I wanted to go Jets. At the time, I had a girlfriend here back home in Littleton, and I thought, man, if I go to the boat, I'm never going to see her again. And as it turns out, I don't see her anymore anyway. But
Shit.
so I went props, and I did intermediate at Corpus in T-34s, and then advanced intermediate at Milton at Whiting Field in T-34s, and then went to Corpus Christi, VT-31, and flew T-44s and got wings there.
Outstanding.
And then after that, you go to San Diego, and you go through SEER school, load school, then you go up to Moffett for 6 months for the RAG, the P3 RAG at VP-31, and then I joined my squadron after that in Okinawa, Japan.
Okay.
November of 85. Yeah, November of 85.
All right. Hey, the other thing I'd like to kind of do here, Butch, well, first of all, let me do this. I'm going to put up on the screen.
Okay.
But for those listening, we briefly touched on it, but not completely. So on the screen, if you're watching, I have the cover of Butch's book, High School Dropout, Stories of a Navy Pilot. So that's available on Amazon. He opens up with the story he just opened up with, talking about smoking the tube off Adak, Alaska. And in there, I seem to recall you talking about when you finally got that beast back to the ramp, your knees were shaking so badly you could barely get out of the get out of the seat. And so it ain't just the F-14 guys landing on carriers that are faced with terrorizing situations.
No. And that actually happened a couple times flying out of Adak.
Yeah, I bet.
The weather in Adak would turn in 2 minutes. And whenever we were even in the bounce pattern doing touch and goes, we had to have our bingo fuel was 22,000 pounds because our closest viable alternate was Anchorage. So, and that was 3.5 hours away. And I remember being in the bounce pattern in Adak once. I was a pilot training officer, and we were doing touch and goes. And I looked up. We did a touch and go, downwind look. I see clouds coming in the distance. Touch and go. back on downwind. The clouds are right here. Touch and go. We had to shoot an ILS to minimums. And it happened that quick.
Wow.
Clouds coming like a freight
Oh,
train.
yeah.
So the ILS is the instrument landing system, and it's an external radio signal that gives you both glide slope and course so that you touch down on the runway at the appropriate spot.
Yeah.
Wow.
It
That
went from
is
severe
terrifying.
clear to minimums in 10 minutes.
That's scary.
It was, and the winds up there are atrocious. The main
Yeah.
runway was 22, magnetic direction of 220, and it was kind of sit in a bowl. So there were times when you would come in and the wind's howling and the wind's swirling. So you'll be coming down the glide path and on the localizer, and you're looking out the runway out of your right window. And then 35 seconds later, you're looking out of the runway out your left window, just to crab because the wind's so hard. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, trying to keep the show linear, I guess, is what I wanted to do. Was the other story you had, and I wanted to touch on it. If you have something to talk about, was that you worked for a bail bondsman while you were in college as well. Was that interesting or terrifying or both?
It was all of the above to the third power.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was a little kid, after my dad left, we moved into the apartment. They were building some condominiums real close to our apartment complex, and I had always loved cops. Back then, I wanted to be a cop when I was like 9, 10.
Every kid does.
Yeah, and there were a couple of Arapahoe County deputies that worked there as security, moonlighting for an extra job. So I would ride my bike by and I'd hang on the fence and I'd look at these guys, they're in their uniforms and they have guns. And I thought, oh, that's so cool. And anyway, one of the guys befriended me and kind of became my surrogate dad for a number of years. Paul Carpenter was his name. He passed away a while back, but, and then he quit the department when they got a new sheriff he didn't like and became a bail bondsman in Montana. Years later, when I'm working in a gas station in Wheat Ridge, I ran into his wife and daughter at a McDonald's one day having lunch, and they had moved back to Denver, and he transferred to Denver as a bail bondsman. So I got reconnected with him when I was in college. I actually worked for him and lived at the bail bonding office in downtown Denver. And at night, so during the day I'd go to school, and at night I'd hang out in the bonding office and we'd talk, and he'd go home and I'd answer the phones at night and write bonds. And it was an incredible experience for a 21-year-old kid from the burbs. I'll say that.
Yeah. Open your eyes as to some of the real crap going on.
Yeah, the real world, was not where I grew up. And yeah, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about life. There were a couple of times guys jumped bail. One guy jumped bail. When somebody gets arrested and a judge sets bail and people don't have the money, they go to a bail bondsman and they get a loan, and the bondsman puts the money up to get him out of jail. And then the bondsman gets his money back after all the court proceedings are done. If they don't show up for court, the court keeps the bondsman's money. And that's when guys like Dog the Bounty Hunter and people like that come in. So Paul wrote a big bond on a guy, and the guy jumped bail, and we knew he was in a house in Denver. So one morning at like 3 a.m., I remember being in this house with Paul looking for this guy, and there were people sleeping. And
so you weren't just writing the bonds, you were going after him.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so we found the guy, and we drug him out of bed and put handcuffs on him and drug him out the back door. And the next day I talked to Paul, and I said, Paul, we could have been killed, and it would have been a righteous shoot because we were in their house. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. He said, okay. So then he got his bonds, his bounty hunter named Keith. And Keith started working for us. So then one night I'm out with Keith, and we're sitting in his van in Lodo in downtown Denver looking for a guy coming out of a bar, and Keith sees him. It's wintertime. It's snowing. There's 12 inches of snow on the ground. Keith steps out of the van and yells at the guy. The guy runs across this vacant field. Keith jumps out of the van, pulls out a 9mm and starts shooting at the guy. Bam, bam, bam. And the guy stops. Keith grabs him, cuffs him up, throws him in the back of his van, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm never hanging out with Keith again. Yeah, so it was crazy stuff back then. I don't think they do that anymore. But
That was
that
Wild
was
West
3 years
days right there. Holy shit, Butch.
Right?
So
No
yeah,
kidding.
the hunting office was interesting. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about different kinds of people. He paid me, I think, $165 a week plus room and board, and it was a great gig. So,
All right.
I wouldn't recommend going in that business, though.
No.
Right?
No. So P3s, Okinawa is your first duty station, right?
My first deployed station. I was actually based out of Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
You guys
squadron.
would do debts.
Yeah, exactly. We were based out of Barbers Point in Hawaii, just on the west side of Pearl Harbor. And then we do 6-month deployments every 12 to 18 months. And I was part of 3 of those.
Yeah, that's rough. So, a difference between P3 guy and a guy that's in the carrier air wing is per diem.
And I always heard those rumors. I mean, we got per diem, but I never got any big checks.
Well, you were making per diem when you were in Okinawa, and when you're on an aircraft carrier, you don't.
No, but you get free sliders 24/7. We didn't get those.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and there's a
There you
auto
go.
dog ice cream machine too, I guess. So
Yeah, no.
then there's that.
But flying either out of Okinawa or Adak, when we were prosecuting submarines, there's a couple of big sub bases in that part of the world. There's Petropavlovsk and Vladivostok, and I think Petropavlovsk is on the peninsula. And so we were always intercepting submarines as they came out and going back in. And then we used to run at the coast all the time, and the MiGs would come out and intercept us, see what we were doing. And so
I wanted to ask you about that. That was, they weren't a threat, right? I mean, they only shot down airliners. They didn't shoot down U.S.
Well, hold on a second.
They were super nice guys.
Yeah.
Well, I used to get that all the time. We would run in towards the shore to 12 miles, which was international airspace at the time, and hard right, do a 180, and go back in at 400 knots, 12 miles turn, and then go up to like 20,000 feet in orbit. And then pretty soon I hear sensor 3 in the headset. I got fire control radar, and then here come 2 MiGs, and they come up. One would stay up high perch above us, and the other one.
So tell us what sensor 3 in the headset means.
In the tube of a P3, you had 3 sensor operators. Sensors 1 and 2 monitor the sonobuoys that go into the water that track the submarines.
And they're pinging submarines.
Yeah. And then sensor 3, he controlled the radar, he controlled the ACM electronics pod, and the ERDS, the infrared camera that came out of the nose. And so the sensor 3 would have all the information from the AQM pod. And so he would hear fire control radar cracking. He'd say, fire control radar, and then we knew the MiGs were coming out, and they'd pull up right next to us, one of them. And we'd hold up like Playboy centerfold pictures in the window, and they'd give us a thumbs up. It was all pretty cool. But yeah, no, in the back of my mind, I always thought about KAL 007,
Right.
that Korean airliner that they shot down. And I thought, man, if they're not going to hesitate about smoking a 747 full of innocent people, they certainly won't have any qualms about shooting us down. But
shooting us and civilians down isn't really an act of war. They shoot you guys down, it's possibly fucking game on.
Yeah.
Oh, would have been, and this was the late 80s, so it was, it was the height of the Cold War, which was going to end soon, but we didn't have any idea.
Didn't know that at the time. Yeah.
Reagan was, beating up Gorbachev pretty bad, right?
Yes, he was. And John Lehman was the SecNav, and they were building a 600 ship Navy, and they just crippled Russia financially, which was genius. and never fired a bullet. But
So can we go back about 2 minutes? Prosecuting submarine. Second time I've heard this. I know generally what you're talking about, but can you? So that's your mission, right? Tracking. That's the mission of the P3.
Yeah, and as you start to talk about that, one of the things you talked about was the sonobuoys, and I guess the best analogy I can give on how that works is if you've ever been looking for a stud in the wall, you tap on the wall until you get a different sound, and that's what the sonobuoys are doing. Except they're trying to bounce sound waves off the hard hull of a submarine, right?
no,
No. Okay.
No.
Then I'm totally clueless on how sonobuoy works.
Okay, so when you prosecute a submarine, there's a couple different ways to do it. Initially, you have to find them. But what you do is you have an idea of where they're coming from, and you have a rough idea of where they're going. So, and this is all done through the intel geeks that are way above my pay grade. And so they give us an area and say, we think this Echo class submarine is going to be transiting this area. So we go out and we drop sonobuoys in the water, and it's a search pattern. And then we orbit, and each sonobuoy has a different channel assigned to it. And each sonobuoy will have different depths that the hydrophone deploys to. So the first thing you do when you get on station is you drop, it's called a BT buoy, a bathythermal. And you take the temperature of the water as the hydrophone deploys.
Okay.
Because water is like air. So you have meteorology and you have oceanography. Of course, meteorology, you have the adiabatic lapse rate. It decreases so many degrees per 1,000 feet.
Right.
And then you'll have inversions where it'll start the temperature will start to increase for a period of time and then begin to decrease again. And that causes, that's temperature inversion, and well, you guys know all about that. But oceanography is the same thing. As you decrease depth in the water, the temperature will get colder, but then you'll reach a point where the temperature will actually get warmer, and then after a period of time, it'll start to decrease again. And that's called the sonic layer depth. And it might be 300 feet deep. It might be 1,000 feet wide.
Okay.
Submarines do not want to travel in that sonic layer depth because the sound waves travel for hundreds and hundreds of miles. So you find the sonic layer depth, and if it's deep, the submarines are on top of it. If it's really shallow, the submarines are below it. So you set the hydrophones on your sonobuoys to where you think the submarine's going to be transiting. And then you listen for the frequencies. And that's what the sensor 1 and 2 operators do on their grams. The buoys, it's kind of like an EKG, like a heart monitor. And then when they sense frequencies, they start to go crazy.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Oh, awesome. All right. And then Stick said to ask about the magnetic anomaly detector, and that's what the tail of the P3 was, wasn't it? A mad boom?
Yeah, that big stinger out of the tail is called a mad boom. It's a magnetic anomaly detector, and it just detects anomalies in the water or breaks in the magnetic field.
Which I guess a big piece of metal like a submarine would create.
It does. It does. And in order to be effective, you got to be down at like 200 or 300 feet. The problem with being down that low is the airplane's throwing so much sound in the water, the submarine knows you're there.
Okay.
Just like doing an active buoy, the sonobuoys I just described are passive. The hydrophone goes down and they listen. We have active buoys that will ping and tell you the exact location of the submarine, but doing that, they know that you're there. And I don't think we ever really used an active buoy the whole time I was in the Navy. It was all passive. But we would track them, pick them up, and then track them. So you go search pattern to a containment pattern, always trying to keep one buoy ahead of the submarine.
That's pretty cool stuff, Butch. So what's an average P3 mission lengthwise when you're prosecuting a submarine?
12 hours.
What? Wait, that sounded to me like you said 12 hours.
12 hours.
Oh, man.
Okay, so let's talk about crew makeup now.
Yeah.
How many pilots and crew members are you carrying for a 12-hour mission, for crying out loud?
A typical combat crew had 12 crew members. We had 5 officers, 3 pilots, NAVCOM, navigator communicator, and a TACO, the tactical coordinator, who was like the mission commander. And then you had 7 enlisted guys, 2 flight engineers. They were senior enlisted, either first class petty officers or chiefs. And then you had sensor 1 and 2 that actually listened to the sonobuoys, sensor 3 that we just talked about. You had an ordnanceman and an in-flight technician to fix all the electronic shit when it broke, because it always broke. But, yeah.
12-hour missions. So you
12.
guys would rotate, kind of rotate seats and go into the bunk, or how did that work?
Yeah, you'd rotate
Pilots.
on the crew. Every hour and a half or 2 hours, you'd rotate. So you'd be in the seat for 3 hours, you get out for an hour and a half. You'd be in the seat for 4 hours, get out for 2.
Okay.
And,
Wow.
Yeah, there were 2 bunks in the very back of the airplane and a little galley. We always had, it was like a 55-gallon drum coffee pot.
Right.
Yeah, you spent all the time drinking coffee and spitting tobacco into cups or smoking cigarettes. Back then, guys,
Exactly.
in the airplane.
Exactly. Getting a bunch of questions in the comments side. Did the P3 carry any torpedoes?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. I did not know that. I assumed you guys were passively armed, as it were, instead of capable of downing
Kinetic.
one.
No, we carry torpedoes. We carry harpoon missiles. We did mining exercises. We carry mines. We could mine inlets.
So would you drop those from the wing, or did you have hard points on the wing for that, or did you have bomb? I've never seen an ordnance.
How'd you do that?
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
had-
Bombay.
Yeah, we had hard points on the wing. We had a Bombay. We had a big ass Bombay.
No shit.
Yeah.
Well, I'm learning.
Big
I'm
ass
learning new
Bombay.
stuff right now. I didn't know P3s had a Bombay.
Because when we would do rim pack exercises, all the Pacific nations would get together once every 2 years, do these. It's a big rim pack. So you have Australia, you have U.S. forces, you have Korea, you have Japan. And we would all get together, and the Australian guys, they'd bring their P3s up, and they had luggage racks in the Bombay you could clip up in there and put your luggage on and stuff. The Aussies always showed up. Their entire Bombay was packed with Foster's beer.
Of course it would be.
And they got off the airplane with little duffel bags, and that was their clothes for the 2 weeks. And say, dude, where's your luggage? Oh, right here, mate.
Yeah.
And they'd unload the beer, and it was crazy. It was so fun. It was fun.
Wow. Yeah. So the other questions we're getting, obviously those were long missions. So, how often did you fly? Were you day on, day off, a couple days off in between? And then how many hours total did you get in the P3? Sounds like it was easy to build a couple.
Yeah, typically after about 3.5 years in the fleet, you got out with about close to 3,000 hours.
Wow.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Very cool.
2,500 wasn't uncommon.
And then
And
how often were you flying in any given week or month?
Yeah. What's that schedule like?
It depends on deployments. You were flying a lot of 18-hour days. We had 3.5-hour pre-flights, 12.5-hour mission or 12-hour mission, and then usually like an hour or 2 debrief. You go back to BOQ, you drink some beer, you sleep for about 10 or 11 hours, and then get up and go fly again.
Start planning all over again.
Yeah, and the at-home cycles were different. The at-home cycles, you're just fleeting up for your next deployment.
Yeah.
So you have guys rotating out of the squadron, guys rotating in. You're trying to get people ramped up.
Get X's in the box, get them aircraft commander quals, and
all that
all
stuff.
Various, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it was the same way with all the seats in the airplane. You're trying to get new sensor operators, new flight engineers come in. They got to get trained up. So yeah, I mean, it was just a constant rotation of people, and it was always busy. Always.
Now, Butch, when you were deployed, did you guys have hard crews, or were you swapping crew members out all the time?
No, we had hard crews. I was the plane commander. My last deployment, I was the plane commander of Crew 8. And typically, unless somebody goes med down, they're sick, which rarely happened. Typically, you're flying with the same people all the time. Excuse me, all the time.
Yeah, that's nice because you got continuity that way.
Oh man, yeah.
I imagine learn who you count on.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys, I mean, it's been 35, almost 40 years, and a lot of them I still talk to.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So, we'd go in, and if we were just a flight of two to go out to the bombing range, something like that, the two pilots that were in a section would meet, and we'd go into a room as just the two of us, and we'd draw up on the board all the admin crap, and then talk about any particulars. And our brief would last anywhere from, early on, when you first start doing it, that, probably an hour pre-brief for a simple mission like that.
Uh-huh.
And when later you were down to 15 minutes. All right, admin stuff standard. Here's the particulars. Let's get out of here.
Right.
What you're talking 3.5 hour pre-briefs. So you're going over the duties of everybody on station, where you're going to be. I imagine it's quite the room, and it's not only one crew, right? You're interfacing with other crews.
Intel on
No.
What's your pre-brief like?
Well, the actual pre-flight of the airplane took like 3 hours because you're always finding things that break. And so that's really what.
Okay.
And then they got to fix shit, and they got to swap boxes, and the list of priorities. The autopilot was below the last item. Autopilots never worked in a P3, and they didn't care.
That's what the
I
co-pilot
had to a
was.
P3 once from Hawaii to Andrews Air Force Base.
Holy
all
shit.
night long without an autopilot. Oh yeah, they didn't care about autopilots. But then as far as the mission briefing went, the tackle would go. Sometimes as the plane commander, I would go. The junior pilot would go get the weather. And then we filed a flight plan, but it took us like 4 minutes because we take one of these Skillcraft government pens.
Okay.
And they're 230 nautical miles on a high altitude chart. So we'd mark the mileage. Okay, it's going to be this many miles, 4,000 pounds an hour. We need 5,000 pounds on top, plus 2,000 pounds for mom. Tell the flight engineer to give me 45,000 pounds of gas. And that's how we pre-flighted. And it drove the Air Force guys nuts.
Oh, yeah.
Because we'd walk into an Air Force base ops and spit out a flight plan in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And say, see ya. They say, you guys are done? Oh, God, yeah. What are you guys doing? Why are you taking so long?
We have to calculate the fuel flow rate, the density of the fuel molecules.
Well, first of all, we have
Tube.
to find the right regulation that makes sure that says we can do what we're about to do, first of all.
Well, and I realized that when I was deployed to Misawa, Japan. I was at the O Club one night in Misawa. I was sitting at the bar next to an F-16 guy. And we were talking. He said, and he asked me the same thing. How long do you guys fly for? I said, typically 12 hours. Wow. Who do you talk to? And I said, nobody. He said, what?
What?
No, I said, we monitor an HF frequency usually, but we typically don't talk to anybody. He's like, wow. He said, man, every time I take off, I have to talk to base ops. I have to tell them my altitude, my airspeed, my heading. I have to ask permission to take a turn or tell them I'm turning and what altitude and what airspeed. And I said, oh, no, we don't do any of that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when I realized that the Air Force and the Navy are different. The Navy had an OpNav 3710.
That thick. This thick right here.
Yeah, it's like a small town phone book.
Yep.
With all the stuff you can't do. You can't take an airplane into a city that's hosting the Super Bowl that weekend because it looks bad. Stuff like that. And the Air Force had volumes of all the things they could do. And it was just different theories.
Yeah.
It's a completely different operating philosophy. But I don't know how they ever get anything done.
So Stick's working in the background managed to pull this image
Oh,
up.
look at that picture.
There you go.
There's a couple torpedoes on the bottom of P3 there. I count 6, 10 on that one. Mm-hmm. Holy cow. So if you're watching on either YouTube or Facebook or Rumble, so there I was.com/Rumble will get you to there.
Yeah. And then somewhere on the internet is a really cool picture of a P3 with the bomb bay doors open, and it's loaded for bear. All the wing hard points are full, and that's also a pretty cool shot.
Nice. Now, where's that bomb bay? Is it after the wing?
It is.
Or forward?
It's forward of the wing.
Okay.
You see
So I
that?
think I see a
little
line for it there,
round-
right? It looks like the prop arc line on that fuselage goes bisects it. So
Exactly. Yep.
yeah, okay.
That's right where it is.
Well, that's an awesome picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had
Thanks, Sticks, for finding that. That was cool.
man. I actually had a 3P flying with me from, and he wasn't very sharp. We were going from Hawaii to Andrews Air Force Base. So I pulled out the approach plate books for Andrews, and I told him, make sure these get on the airplane. He said, okay. So the next day we take off, fly all night long, getting close to Andrews. And I said, Doc, where's the approach plates? And he looked at me. I said, Doc, we need the approach plates.
Approach what?
And he looked at me. And I said, they're on the airplane, right? He said, oh, yeah. I said, where are they? I put them in the bomb bay. Well, you can't access the bomb bay from inside the airplane.
Yeah, but you told him to put him on the airplane. He listened to what you
So we got Andrews, and I asked for, and so I asked the guy, I said, hey, for training purposes, can I get a GCA? He said, okay. So we got a GCA into Andrews because I had no idea.
Yeah. Ground controlled approach.
Approach.
So, oh, that's awesome.
And doing GCAs in Japan was really a trip because the Japanese controllers, their English is pretty broken. And so that, when you do a GCA, they'll tell you on course, on glide path.
Right.
Drifting left, turn right, to 235 degrees. Okay, back on course, on glide path. And the Japanese guys would be on course, on glide path, on course, on glide path. We're pretty good. Don't touch nothing. Yeah.
Don't touch nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember those days from Iwakuni.
There you go.
Okay. Holy cow, Butch. So, did you do your? So back when you got winged, was it an 8-year commitment after wings, or 6 years? What was your commitment?
Well, for me, it was 5 years after wings.
Okay, 5 years after. It took you about a year and a half, 2 years to get your wings from start to finish.
Total, I was 7.5 years in.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, so did you get off active duty and keep a reserve commission and stay in the reserves, or
I did not.
Okay.
I did not. I went to work for U.S. Customs down in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Right after you got out of the Navy.
After I got out of the Navy, I got out of the Navy September of '90, and I started with Customs January of '91. And back then, the only viable reserves outfit to fly with was out of New Orleans. So you had to get to New Orleans, and logistically, it was not viable.
So those are the guys. I know I've mentioned it on this show once or twice before. I was waiting to start flight school, and Navy New Orleans P3 came through Pensacola and took me out to Bermuda because my sister was living in Bermuda at the time, and I went out to visit her.
Okay.
And that was the longest winter of my life, that night flying to Bermuda. Was it cold in the back?
Well, you had to keep the tube really cold because all the computers.
Oh, sure, yeah. A lot of heat generated back there.
Oh, it was brutal.
There were 15 of us all huddled around the flight deck door because the only heat on the airplane was coming off the flight deck.
Uh-huh.
So Butch, did you fly P3s for U.S. Customs and Border Patrol?
I did. I flew P3s. I went through a 6-month federal police academy in Glencoe, Georgia, FLETC.
Yeah.
Law Enforcement Training Center. And then I was a P3 pilot and instructor pilot. I went back to FLETC. I was a firearms instructor for 5 years.
No way.
And then back then it was a different environment. I mean, we wore Levi's and t-shirts to work. We had free reign. We could fly anywhere we wanted to. We'd fly over Mexico. We never filed flight plans. Because
Sounds like Julio from our squadron.
well, I don't know.
He'd fly over Mexico, coming out of the chocolates, going into Yuma, that little corner of Mexico, up into Arizona. Julio just go straight across Mexico.
Right.
They'd get on.
Julio, check your heading. It's okay.
He's okay. I'm good.
It's okay.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time in Central and South America. We flew a lot out of Panama. Spent a lot of time in Bolivia, Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. Yeah, there you go. There's a Bombay picture.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you were
put that up
doing
on the video.
like you were looking for drug runners, right?
Right. Yeah, we work narcotics interdiction.
So a lot of night flying probably with sensors.
No, night and day.
Okay.
Yeah, those guys had so much money. Their airplanes were better equipped than ours as far as radar and navigation systems. And no, I mean, we flew a lot of daytime stuff. I spent a lot of time in Bolivia. We flew out of Santa Cruz, Bolivia. The airport there is Vero Viru. It's a huge airport, and there was nothing happening there. It was actually built by the Japanese because they were going to make Bolivia a tourist destination at one time. And Bolivia was awesome. But we flew a lot out of Bolivia, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador. We worked with the host military. And yeah, we tracked narcos. And,
Okay.
The whole idea was we would track them. And then when they landed, we'd land behind them and bust them. But they landed in really small strips and our airplane was too big. So we'd have to call out host nations to check them out.
And were those typically a 12-hour type mission?
No, when I got to customs, there were some 12s. There were a lot of 6, 8, and 10s, which weren't bad. It was more like a part-time job at that point because you're used to, 18-hour days, and suddenly you have 10-hour days. It's like, woo, it's a part-time job.
So were the guys you were flying with at customs, were they fellow Navy P3 guys, or were they from all
Yes.
different walks of life?
They were primarily former P3 guys, pilots, and former P3 flight engineers. And then the radar operators in the back were former, for the most part, Navy and Air Force, like AWACS guys.
Yeah.
People like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was cool.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So how long did you do that?
6 years. I did it for 6 years. Initially, when I got down there, it was a lot of fun. I had the opportunity flying out of Bolivia a lot to work with Operation Snowcap, which is the DEA operation.
Okay.
And I spent weeks and weeks in the jungle with them at their base camp outside of Cochabamba, working with the Bolivian military in the UMAPAR. Most of the cocaine at the time was grown in a region of Bolivia called the Chapari. And so at nighttime, we would go out with Snowcap and the Bolivian military, sometimes the UMAPAR, and we'd find little mom and pop operations.
Well, hold on a second. Butch, are you talking about you're on foot?
Yeah.
Or are you in an airplane?
No, I was on the ground with the Snowcap guys.
What the hell are you thinking?
They would fly. It was fun, man. It was awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, you were telling me you were riding in a helicopter.
Yeah.
Doing that too. So they didn't cert you guys?
No.
Okay.
A Snowcap team is built like a spec ops team. So they're 12-man teams. There were DEA agents from around the country that would apply to be part of Snowcap. If they got accepted, they had to go through a whole bunch of training. They had to go to Spanish school. They had to go to a little mini ranger school down in Fort Benning. They had to go to a JEST jungle survival training. And then once they finished all their stuff, they got put on a team. And when their team's number came up, they went down in country and they were down there for 3 months. And so I would hook up with those guys outside of Santa Cruz in Coach at their base camp, and we hang out. And they were built, just like a special forces unit. They had a CO, they had an XO, they had an operations officer, they had an admin officer, a training officer, a firearms guy, an EOD guy, a medic. And so we're down in the bush. I was down in the bush with them. During the day, I'd talk to our airplanes and have them overfly locations these guys wanted pictures of. And then at night, I'd go out with them on occasion, and it was crazy. It was crazy.
And were you the firearms guy?
No.
What was your
They had
job?
their own firearms guy. Actually,
Oh,
my
okay.
director, the first time I went down there before I left Texas, my director said, "Do not carry a gun down there." And I said, "Okay." And I got down there and met the team leader, actually the senior agent in charge. And I
Okay.
said, "My director told me I can't carry a gun." He said, "Okay, go over there and see Todd and get your gun, and then go over here and get your fatigues and go over here." So I was
Okay, go over there and get your gun.
yeah.
That
And
you're
then I
not
got
gonna
to the
carry.
point where the EOD guy, the explosive guy, would sometimes at night he'd give me a sheet of paper with a bunch of lengths on it, numbers. And so he taught me how to cut det cord and crimp blasting caps on the end of it. And then so I do all these rings or all these runs of det cord for him. And then
Tell me
early
you were tough like John Wayne. Did you crimp them with your teeth?
no, oh god. No. And we'd sit out and drink beer at night, and I cut det cord for him, and then one morning we threw a bunch of ordnance into a Huey helicopter, and we were going to go out to these little clandestine airfields where they took off and crater the fields to make them unusable. And so I remember that morning, man, flying in this Huey, flown by these Bolivian pilots, sitting on this Huey with my feet on the skids and an M16 across my lap. And we're like treetop level over triple canopy jungle, and the sun's just coming up. And I thought, man, this is as close to Vietnam as I'm ever going to get. It was so cool.
I would think you would be saying, "How did I get myself in this predicament?"
Oh, well,
I mean, it sounds great. I mean, it really does. But the what's the word I'm looking for? The real the impact.
It's surreal, is what it is.
Yes.
You know?
it was.
Feet on the skids, sun coming up over triple canopy with an M16 across your lap, and you got a bunch of explosives sitting behind you. I'm thinking, this is cool. Wait a minute. Then I started thinking of all the things that could possibly go wrong at this moment.
This is not how most people spend their mornings, but all right.
It's not.
Yeah,
That's a great way to catch a sunrise. But
Join the
hey,
U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. Fly
Yeah.
B-3s, they said. They said it was going to be awesome.
Fun
What a
and
great
easy.
part-time job.
Well, I was one of the few guys in my office that actually volunteered to do that.
Whoa.
Most of the guys I
You
flew-
volunteered for this.
oh, sure. Yeah.
But you are...
I mean, most of the guys I
You're-
flew with were married. You know, they had kids. Great guys. They were great pilots. They were great agents. Really good shots. But they didn't want to be gone for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. And I was like, I was single. I'm like, hey, I'll go.
Okay.
Hey, I want to back up too
making sense
and
now.
cover a term. I just want to cross. We just want to cross it. And of course, Fig and I got it when we were at the basic school. We learned about all this stuff. What is det cord? What are blasting caps?
Oh,
How does
yeah.
it work?
Thank you.
Why
That's
does it
good,
work?
Repeat. Yeah.
Oh, well, they're detonation cords, and it's like a little skinny white rope, but it's got explosives in it. It's kind of like a fuse. And then caps are
A
like
fuse that goes off all at once, right?
well, it'll go.
Yeah.
And then the blasting caps are silver. They're primers, kind of almost like a primer you have
It's
in
the
the
ignition
cartridge
source,
of
right?
a bullet.
It's the
Yeah.
ignition source for the explosive.
So it would make the spark, and then the det cord would burn, and then it hit the explosive, and boom.
Boom.
Yeah.
Nice.
Boom.
Yeah. But
And so why would you? I guess then what I'm getting to is why would you use det cord? You were going out to crater the runways. Det cord wasn't going to do that. So how did that work for you?
well, no. Then the EOD guy would attach the shaped charges onto the det cord, and we'd be a long way away when he detonated it. You don't want to be on top of it when it goes. So
Important safety tip, folks.
we would use shaped charges to blow deep holes in the runways, and then he would put other charges in there that would just crater the hell out of them, make huge holes. And then C5 on the trees, and we blow that up, and the trees would topple down on the runways to try to make them unusable. The thing is, down there in Bolivia, the people that grew the cocoa, they were like mom and pop operations, and the cartels came in and paid them They used to grow coffee, but there was more money in dope than coffee. So the cartels came in and talked to them and said, we'll pay you all this money if you grow cocoa leaves. So they started growing cocoa, and they would mix the cocoa. They used precursors and cook it into a paste. And they put the paste in 5-gallon buckets. And then they'd use little single engine airplanes to fly out of these small strips in the jungle. And they'd fly it up into southern Colombia where they had big labs. And they would manufacture it into the powder, package it into kilos, and use bigger airplanes to fly it out of Colombia. And so that's the reason we were in Bolivia, was to take down these little clandestine operations.
And so the type of guys you were trying to foil, I guess, are the guys like there's a movie called American Made, and it's about a former TWA pilot, Barry Seal, who started running drugs.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah. I think Barry Seals flew DC-3s, and he was primarily out of Colombia. But, back then people, my
and
sister.
the stick says now they're using submarines. So get the P3s back out.
Okay. Yeah. I spent time in subs in the Navy, but we passed that. But anyway, so that's the reason I was down there. Back then my sisters used to tell everybody I worked for the DEA. I was a DEA agent. I'd say, no, I wasn't a DEA. I worked with them. And then after a while, you just give up, you're like, okay.
Right.
But it was, it was a cool time. And back then people say, well, what's it really like? And back then there were 2 movies out that were really accurate. One was Traffic with Michael Douglas. Yep. And it showed the drug war from different perspectives, from the politician side of it, to the DEA street agent side of it, to the Mexican police side of it, to the street use side of it. And it was really well done. And then another one was Clear and Present Danger with Harrison Ford. And that was pretty realistic as far as a lot of the events and a lot of the facilities that they had back then.
That started as a Tom Clancy book. So if you don't want to watch a movie, that's a good book to read.
It is. It's a big fat book. But Clancy researches his stuff, or did, very well. And then since then, now there's a couple Netflix shows on. One of them,
Narcos.
Yeah, one of them Narcos, and that's dead nuts accurate. And then the other one is it's called The Last Narc, and it's a 3 or 4 part series about Kiki Camarena.
Oh, right.
And he was a DEA agent that was abducted in Guadalajara and tortured and killed. That one's really, really good. But yeah. So,
I think that's didn't Reagan shut down the border over that one?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, that was horrific. That was a really bad deal. I mean, back when I was down there, the rumor was we all had $1 million bounties on our heads from the narcos and stuff. But I was never concerned because I knew that they would never target us again like that, because it literally would have started World War III for them. And so they were smart enough, I mean, not to really mess with us. We didn't.
Sure.
I never felt endangered out in the town, like in Santa Cruz or Guayaquil, Ecuador, or Chiclayo, Peru, or Panama. I never felt like we were really targeted by anyone.
Sure.
Mm-mm.
So we might have breezed over it. Did I hear you say submarines? You had a little submarine expedition?
Yeah. When I was in Hawaii as a pilot training officer, we were required every day to read the message boards. Those aluminum books. And there was a red one, a yellow one, and a green one. Green was like general operations. Yellow was confidential. Red was top secret. And we had to read it and then initial each item that we had read it.
Right.
But in the green book, they would occasionally ask for VP, which is fixed wing patrol, P3 liaison officers, to go on these ships and while they're doing workup exercises. And so I would volunteer for that. And I was on a submarine. The first sub I was on it for like 3 weeks. It was a boomer converted to a slow attack. and it was a nuke sub out of Pearl. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I signed up and I went. And it was probably one of the coolest things I'd ever done. Be on a nuclear submarine for 3 weeks, man.
How about that?
And it was right at it. This was maybe 87. I don't even think I was a patrol plane commander at the time. But it was right after the movie Top Gun came out. And so all these guys on the submarine thought that my life was like Tom Cruise. And all I did was run around and drink and, cruise chicks. And
Play volleyball with your shirt off.
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Buzzing the tower.
But it was really interesting. And I was on there, and I spent a lot of time on the bridge of the sub with either chief of the watch or the captain of the boat or the XO. And while we were doing exercises, they would ask me, okay, so as a P3 guy, what are you thinking right now? I said, well, I'd be thinking this, and I'd be dropping buoys here, and I'd be looking for this and that. And so we traded information back and forth. I can't get real classified with it. And, at night I would have dinner with the captain in his stateroom. He had a little Filipino MS that would come in and serve us in his coat and tie and shirt and coffee. And probably the coolest experience I had was there was a tunnel on the submarine, and it went from, I just remember being in the wardroom having breakfast one of the first mornings with the XO of the boat, and he was the lieutenant commander, and there was a table, 4 or 5 guys in the corner. I said, who are those guys? He said, don't even think about it, buddy. He said, those are the nukes. Those guys run the reactor. And unless you want to talk about splitting atoms or atomic fusion, they got nothing to talk about. Don't talk about football or women or bourbon, none of that.
They're physics geeks.
Absolutely. God bless them, because they're on our side.
Right.
But there was a tunnel in the sub when you went from the submarine to get into engineering spaces, and you had to open up a hatch and walk through and close the hatch, and it was about maybe 10 or 12 foot area. Another hatch, and if you went through that hatch, you walked down, and that's where the nukes hung out in the engineering spaces. But on the floor of that tunnel was a steel plate about the size of a manhole cover, and it was about 1/4 inch thick. Had a couple holes in it, and you could pull that thing off the floor and slide it. And you were looking through 5 feet of stained glass, leaded glass. It was tinted yellow, and you were looking right down onto the top of the reactor. And I laid there for hours, fascinated. I'd lay there and look down and just watch the rods come up and down. And I'm thinking, man, I grew up in Littleton, Colorado, and dropped out of high school, and I'm looking at a nuclear reactor operating. It was bizarre to me.
Repeat, it's all starting to make sense now.
There you go.
It's all starting to make sense.
Exactly.
And I still glow in the dark a little bit.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Oh, Butch.
He's
that's
actually
awesome,
in a darkened
man.
room at night.
He glow, his teeth glow. Oh, dude, that's really cool, though.
It was so wild. Yeah. Yeah, and I got to go up on the sail of the ship, of the sub, when we were surfaced. And they put me on the dive planes one time. Captain put a harness on me. Had a guy put a harness on me. I sat on the dive planes of the sub. And we're doing 15 knots on the surface.
Oh, man.
Bow wave. And it was like, oh, my God, this is awesome.
Well, that is pretty cool.
King of the world.
I said, no, I'm not going anywhere. This is fine.
Get out further.
Yeah. You're king of the world.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And I think you told me on one of the pre-chats, too, that after dinner, you and the captain would have a glass of iced tea.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nice. He hid them in Scotch bottles so no one would drink the guy's tea.
Nice.
Yeah. No, it was such a great experience. I actually sat in. They had me sit in on a board for a young enlisted kid that was getting his dolphins, and I was amazed.
Oh, you got to say what that is.
They're
tell people what the dolphins are.
The dolphins are the little
The water wings.
Wings.
Yeah.
The submarine guys wear them. The surface guys wear them.
The water wings, they call them, I think.
Okay. Yeah, but they were dolphins, and the enlisted guys had silver dolphins, and the officers, and I think the chiefs had gold dolphins.
Yeah.
But they're literally, it's like 2 dolphins nose to nose. And it's kind of like their wings. And so
Yeah.
I got to sit in on a board. This kid was getting his dolphins.
Well, that's cool.
And I was amazed at how sharp those guys were. They knew every valve, every switch, every hatch on that submarine.
Yeah, they don't let dumb
And
guys
they got
on
drilled with
submarines.
questions for like 12 hours.
Yeah, they don't let Harrier pilots on submarines for
No.
a reason.
Yeah. We,
No,
dumb, we dumb the place down as soon as we step foot on board.
Well, Harriers had to be cool. The only time I've seen Harriers is at air shows a couple of times when I
It was a great air show bird. I'll give them that. It was a lot of fun to fly.
That's really all we did was practice for air shows and fly air shows.
Oh, nice, man. Hey, why not? Why not? Yeah. No, I
So
did.
all of that, and the other thing you did, I guess, you were a RAG instructor too. So you taught new guys who'd just gotten their wings how to fly the P3.
I did. I did.
Moffett?
I was a RAG instructor. You taught CPTs, which are cockpit procedure trainers. They're just pictures of the cockpit panels, and they had to know where the switches are for for certain things. And then I taught full flight sims, and then I taught in the airplane when you had young ensigns literally trying to kill you every day.
Of course.
It was fun. It was fun. Back then, I developed a real appreciation for Mr. Rogers. There were days when I was just done trying to be killed. So I'd go to my apartment in Mountain View, right outside the gate at Moffett, and I'd shut all the blinds, and I'd crank the AC down to like 60, and I'd lay on the couch underneath this Afghan that my mom knitted me, and I would turn on Mr. Rogers. And we always took a trip with Mr. Rogers. You always go,
Right.
The Magic Kingdom, and you go on field trips. And one time we went to the Spoon Factory. And I remember after a really hard day one afternoon, I'm laying on my couch and we're at the Spoon Factory. And they had all these spoons coming down the conveyor belt into a great big cardboard bin. And Mr. Rogers says, "Look at all the spoons." And I laid on the couch and said, "Ooh, look at all the spoons." Really, you just had to unplug,
Calm yourself down, I guess. Yeah. Oh, man. So something you kind of glossed over there, but I'll tell you what, anybody who's either an aspiring young aviator, I would do this. Remember, Fig, having to do blind cockpit?
Oh, yeah.
Get in to do the blindfold. All right.
Oh,
Where's
yeah.
the where are your flaps? Where's the switch for this light? Where's the switch for your transponder? You had to do it blindfolded. And I highly recommend anybody who wants to really get a good feel for their airplane have the ability to
that's a really good tip, and that's something that we did not do. The only thing I did blindfolded was the panic in a drum, the helo dunker.
Oh yeah.
Which I hated.
Panic in a drum. Nice.
Yeah. But
All
no,
right.
I mean, that's actually a really good tip. That's a great tip.
Yeah, that it just you know where things are, and I wouldn't go flipping switches blindly, but at least you know where to get your hands in the neighborhood and then look and go.
Yeah, just be able to
There
touch.
may be a time.
Feel
Yeah.
it.
So all right. So what's the closest a student ever came to taking you out with him?
Probably we were doing 2-engine high work, and he kicked the wrong rudder, and the airplane.
So 2 engines on one wing off, 2 engines on the other wing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he went full power on the 2 operating engines and kicked the wrong rudder, and the airplane went inverted like that.
I was going to say, I bet sounds like you went to the rodeo at about half a second flat.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking you didn't stay on the bull.
No, I did not. No, I missed that one. I upped my guard position greatly after that little extravaganza. But yeah, by and large, by the time they got into the airplane, for the most part, they had been through the sims, and they had a pretty good feel. But you were single pilot. I remember the first time I had my first kid in his first flight in a P3, and set takeoff power, and he's in the left seat, and all he could say was, "God damn, this thing's got a lot of power." It was 4,600 shaft an engine, So it's pretty powerful. And when the airplane's light, man, it'll go.
Yeah.
God damn, this thing's got a lot of power. Yeah, it does. 80 knots. God damn, this thing's got a lot of power. Rotate. God damn, this thing's got a lot of power. Okay, positive rate. God damn, this thing's got a lot of power. Gear up. You know, it's like, dude, you got to focus, dude.
Fly.
Yeah, going back. Yeah. So, let me ask this. So, was it just the flight crew when you were out doing that at the RAG? Or you didn't have guys in the back training, did you?
No, not typically. It was just just me, 2 student pilots, an instructor flight engineer, one or 2 student flight engineers, and they'd rotate through the seat.
That's still enough people to terrify, though, to find yourself in first.
And then you had an aft observer, a seasoned crew guy that would, watch engine starts and look for traffic and stuff like that. But, yeah. So that was fun. I didn't really have. When I was at the RAG, attached to VP-31, it was called the VIP crew, the VIP crew, and it was 2 lieutenant commanders, a couple of senior flight engineers, and MS, and they flew Sink-Pack Fleet. They flew Admiral Fetterman at the time around, and he was headquartered down in San Diego at North Island, but his airplane was at Moffett for maintenance reasons and operations reasons. And the 2 lieutenant commanders liked me. So whenever they had to go on long flights and they needed more than 2 pilots, they always got me to go with them. So the first trip, we flew Admiral Jack Fetterman down to Christchurch, New Zealand via Tahiti. And then he went down to McMurdo down in the South Pole with VXE-6 in the C-130s on skis. Yeah. So we essentially had like 2 weeks off in Christchurch. It was a vacation.
Was that a P3, the Admiral's plane?
Yeah, right. It was a P3, but it was outfitted. It was a VIP bird.
I was gonna say. So yeah, so it had a nice interior and.
Oh yeah, big leather seats and a big queen size bed in the back, and
nice.
Had a big galley, and
Hold on, you guys didn't have that in the fleet? When you're out doing anti-sub ops, you didn't have comfy beds and leather chairs, and
we had ovens that were like out of 707. We had one oven and a coffee pot, and that was pretty much our contingent.
Oh, man.
But yeah, no. So we got to fly him. He was a super nice guy, very engaging. He flew SPADs in Vietnam.
Oh wow.
I think maybe A6s as well, but super nice guy. And the first time, we flew to Tahiti and spent 2 days there while he was doing conferences. And very first leg, we picked him up at San Diego and blasted out. And I'm walking through the tube trying to get to the bathroom. Didn't want to bother him. He's in a big leather seat by the back window, and I'm walking by, and he looks up and Butch. Yes, sir. Have a seat. So I sat in the chair next to him, and we talked for like 45 minutes. He said, "So where are you from? How do you like P3s? How'd you like the fleet?" And he was so engaging and so nice.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. That's the first real admiral I had ever talked with.
Isn't it cool? Isn't it cool when you meet a general officer like that? That's a real person and actually gives a shit.
Oh, he was absolutely a sweetheart, man.
No.
Absolutely, just a great human. And we talked about his tours in D.C. and how much he hated Washington D.C. He says, "Oh, cocktail parties, and it's hard on your liver when you're in D.C. You got all these cocktail parties."
Yeah, but it is.
Yeah. So I flew with the VIP crew a couple of times, which was really fun. When I was in the fleet in Hawaii, we had a couple lieutenant commanders that had rotated out of a squadron called VPU-2 projects, special projects, spook squadron. And they got me hooked up with them when I was in Hawaii as a rental pilot. So I flew with projects a couple of times. And that was really, really interesting stuff. Most of the gear in the airplane I wasn't allowed to see. It was all behind curtains. Never met any of the operators. They were all behind curtains.
So they were doing testing?
They were doing whatever they do. We were flying off the coast of Vietnam one time.
Okay.
One time we're flying in the
You're
Pacific.
the aircraft commander. You're responsible for everything on board, anything that may or may not go on, but you're not allowed to know what any of that is.
Yeah, I was not the plane commander. I was just there as a rent-a-pilot, you know?
Yeah, but okay, still, the
Top's qualified.
commander's probably in the same boat. Yeah.
Yeah, one time I was out with them. I think we were flying out of Misawa, Japan. Or I think Misawa. We were flying out we were in the North Pacific.
Okay.
And they knew that the Russians were going to launch an ICBM for training. And it was going to come up somewhere in the North Pacific, and it was going to splash down somewhere near Midway. And they told me, I said, okay, here's the drill, Butch. If you're in the left seat, they had a big fancy camera behind the cockpit on the left side. If you're in the left seat and this thing comes out of the water and they call it, just keep it in the window. Keep it in the window. Keep rolling the airplane. Keep it in the window. I said, okay. So sure as shit, man, when that thing broke the surface, I was in the left seat. Keep it in the window. The flight engineer told me, I'll take care of the power and keep the airplane flying. You just keep that in the window. And I kept rolling and rolling and rolling. And I think we were like 135 degrees.
Oh, shit.
The airplane was inverted. It was still in the window. And then we broke it off and righted the airplane. But I remember that was another moment for me when I
Do you have that picture?
Oh, no, I never got a picture.
No.
It's in my brain.
It's
there you go.
ingrained in his memory.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but I remember thinking to myself, this is exactly what the beginning of the end of the world looks like right here.
Yeah.
Missiles are going to start coming out of the water. And it was like, wow.
What kind of range were you, if you estimate, how far away from it when it came out of the water were you when you were when you picked it up?
Realistically, I want to say probably 5 miles.
Oh, shit. That's a lot closer than I
You were
would
right there.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I'd say 5 miles, maybe a little further. It was big, and it was bright, and it was
Wow.
Yeah. That was a game changer for me, seeing the beginning of the end of the world, how it might look. And then the other one was we were flying in Peru. And we were tracking a guy in a light twin engine airplane. And we called, and the Peruvian military sent out 2 A-37s.
Okay.
Tweets.
Yeah.
The Air Force used them as primary jet trainers. Down there, they are frontline fighters.
They put hard points on them, yeah. Fighter bombs.
They did.
Yeah.
And guns. And so we're tracking this guy, and these 2 A-37s pull up. We were like 1,000 feet, maybe 1,500. And he's down pretty low. And these A-37s pull up. One of them stays behind him, and another one pulls up right next to the airplane, and he waggles his wings and turns. The international signal for follow me.
Follow me.
Comes back around. The guy doesn't change course. Pulls up again. Waggles the wings. Follow me. Pulls off. Guy doesn't listen. He pulls up, not a beam this time, and blasts the guns on the airplane. So you see the tracers flying by the airplane. And he pulls up again. Wags his wings. Follow me. Pulls off. Doesn't do it. So finally, they both get up behind him, and they shoot rounds into the airplane. Airplane's still flying. Pull up. Follow me. Nothing. So they start running in on this guy and start shooting this airplane full of holes.
Just doing gun runs.
And this guy ditches the airplane in the river. And we watch him ditch the airplane. The left door opens up. He gets out of the airplane, swims onto the shore bank, and disappears into the jungle. And these A-37s take turns peppering this airplane. And in the river, the current, the airplane's floating and turning down river, and they pepper this airplane until it sinks. And then they head off. And we're heading back to, I think we were flying out of Chiclayo, Peru at the time, which is like 300 miles north of Lima on the coast. And on the way back, I'm thinking about that poor son of a bitch. And I thought, he'll never make it. He's in triple canopy jungle. He's going to get eaten by bugs or some monster, whatever lives down there.
Right.
I just thought, man, I hope it was worth it, dude. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know.
Shit.
But, yeah. So yeah, I mean, we used to track these guys out of South America, out of Colombia, and typically they would either fly north and airdrop their stuff south of Puerto Rico, where it'd get picked up by go fast boats. Because once you got dope into Puerto Rico, it was home free because that's a U.S. territory. So when you fly from Puerto Rico to the States, you never go through customs.
Right.
Or they would fly west through the Bay of Panama and hug the west coast of Central America and fly it into Mexico. And then from there, it would get muled either by people or trucks or cars into the United States. So that was our primary area of operation. And that's what we did. Yeah, and it was fun, man. We made a lot of bucks. We put a lot of dope on the table for the first few years I was there. And then after that, the government made the Air Force the lead agency in the drug war, and that they were done putting dope on table. It was all about tracking targets, TOIs, targets of interest. How many targets of interest do you have? Did you have? I don't know. Who cares? 8, 9, 15.
No kidding.
Yeah, so I got into an argument. I was plane commander on a detachment in Panama when I was with Customs. And I had this colonel call me one Saturday night and say, you guys are going to fly tomorrow from 09 to 1500. I said, no, we're not. He said, yeah, you are. I said, no, we're not. We're not wasting our time. Well, what do you mean? I said, look, these guys are narcos, but they're devout Catholics. They don't work on Sundays. We're not going to waste our time. We got in the big pissing contest over that. And then
did you fly?
Another time a guy calls me, yeah, you guys are going to fly tomorrow night. I said, no, we're not going to fly tomorrow night. He said, yeah. I said, why do you want us to fly tomorrow night? Well, it's a full moon. I said, dude, that theory went out with the 70s, man. These guys have better navigation, better radar than we have. They don't give a shit about a full moon. We're not going. We know they're not going tomorrow night. So, yeah, so that got pretty frustrating. And that's, after about a year and a half, I wanted to get out of the aviation side and just go be a street agent. I actually had a job offer from the RAC office here in Denver. I just wanted to get away from the flying for a while. The aviation guys wouldn't let me go. And they said, no, we need pilots. And I said, well, if you don't let me go, I'm going to quit. And they said, okay. So I quit. And that's when I got on with Northwest Airlines in 97.
Okay.
Flew DC-9s for a couple of years, flew DC-10. I wrenched on that for 6. And then I flew the A320 the last couple of years I was there. We referred to flying the DC-9 as pushing the dumpster to another happy hour. Airline life was fun back then.
Pushing the dumpster to another happy hour. Wow.
That's a great analogy right there.
Yeah. But it was fun. And then 07, we took big pay cuts, and after September 11th, the job got to be no fun. A lot of it, and it's like, okay. So I quit and got on with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. I was a deputy sheriff for 15 years.
Right there in Colorado.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Any, we're getting to the point where we probably need to start looking at landing the plane. Any particular funny stories from either OCS or the police academy or on the street as a deputy sheriff?
Yes. Gunny Go. You guys had Gunny Go.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Gunny Go.
And I show 17, I think. I'll find it.
Yeah. And today I love the guy, and I talked to him on the phone. I got his number. And my drill instructor was Gunnery Sergeant Washington, United States Marine Corps. But you want to talk about funny guys. When you're there, it's not funny. But looking back, it was a riot.
Oh, yeah.
They're full-on comedians.
Oh. There was a kid, and he was in a different class than me. And he was a real tall, skinny black dude. And he was not handsome. He looked like a human version of a cartoon character out of the Bill Cosby Show. And he had really super thick glasses, like NASA telescope lens thick.
Yes.
So the kid had to be maybe a maintenance officer or an intel guy, because all those guys had to go through AOCS as well. Pilots, flight officers, aviation intel, and aviation maintenance officers had to go through AOCS. And when you walked in the chow hall, you had to pound on the brass and say your number. 1, 2, 3. And every time I was in the chow hall and this kid came in, he pounded 27. And the DI's table was at the far corner of the chow hall. There was usually 4 of them, maybe 5 sitting there at a time. And this kid would say his number, and I'd wait for a second, and I'd hear "Go Forth" fire up. Oh, goggles. Oh, goggles. Come here, sweetheart. And this kid would have to go over to the DI table and look into this ice cream freezer with a mirror on it. And Gunny go and say, tell me why you are so ugly, boy. Why are you so damn ugly, boy? And I felt so bad for this kid. He's sweating bullets. All he wants to do is eat and go, but nope, never happened. Oh, goggles. Yeah. Yeah, that was Gunny Go in his prime, baby. Yep.
Oh, I started having flashbacks myself. Of
Yeah.
OCS.
Well, the first drill instructor I met was Gunnery Sergeant Crenshaw, who was a mountain of a man. And he was the biggest, darkest human being I had ever seen in my life. And the very first morning of Poopyville, you're laying there in your rack, and at 5 o'clock, shit's hitting the fan, but you have no idea what time it is. There's no clocks. They take your watches. So you don't know if it's 5 minutes after midnight or if it's 1 minute to 5 a.m.
Right.
And you lay there terrified. And pretty soon you just go back to sleep and the trash cans hit the wall and the lights are coming on. And you hear, get on my line, get on my line. And you're getting dressed and you're running. And I was the last guy out of the 4-man room. And I grabbed the threshold of the door to, launch myself out. And I did that. And boom, I hit something so hard. And I stop and I'm looking down. And I can see my reflection in these 2 polished boots.
Oh, shit.
And I start looking up, man. Camo, tree trunks. And I see this big brass belt buckle. And I can see my reflection and the horror in my eyes, man. And I kept looking up, and all I see is this jet black face and this campaign cover and these white teeth and these white eyeballs. And he looks at me and he said, boy, we ain't going to get along. And I feed myself a little bit, and that started Poopyville, baby. That was the first one.
Oh.
I feed myself a little bit. I love it.
I mean, there was Crenshaw, there was Gunny Go, there was Master Sergeant Flager, there was Gunny Washington, Gunny Kerr. I think Thixton was still there at the time, training Staff Sergeant Walker. Yeah. And the fun began.
Oh, yeah. Good times, man.
Okay, so we had a guy in our squadron in Hawaii. And I'm not going to say his name, but he wasn't very bright. We called him Spicoli. Because if you ever saw that movie, Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this was Spicoli. And I remember one time I was flying with Spicoli. He got plussed on my crew for a ASW, a submarine mission, 12-hour flight. I'm back in the galley, and Spicoli has a little igloo lunchbox. And I open it up. And for a 12-hour flight, this guy brought 3 packs of Marlboros, 5 Snickers bars, and a 6-pack of Coke.
Wow.
That's his subsistence for the 12 hours.
Wow.
But
Man, he's going to run out of cigarettes.
But Spicoli's with his crew, and they're south of Hawaii, and they're coming up to Honolulu, and the plane commander tells Spicoli, hey, call center and get our clearance back to Barbers. So Spicoli, Yankee Bravo 06, 120 miles south and Barbers. And the controller said, okay. Squawk, gave a code, transponder code, squawk 6573. And then the controller said, Yankee Bravo, 06, radar contact. You have traffic 2 o'clock, opposite direction, altitude unknown. And Spicoli, Yankee Bravo 06, Nordo. The controller says, Yankee Bravo 06, how do you read this transmitter? Loud and clear. Yankee Bravo 06, traffic 2 o'clock, opposite direction, altitude unknown. Yankee Bravo 06, Nordo. He got Nordo and No Joy confused.
Nordo means no radio. Can't
radio.
hear you. Can't
Yeah.
talk. Oh,
Yeah.
God.
And so that goes on for a period of time. And I'm sure that controller still has the cassette tape of that. They have like their controller parties or whenever they have their get-togethers. I'm sure he slips it in there for laughs.
Listen to this idiot.
There goes our Nordo. Yeah.
That's outstanding. Oh, man.
Not normal stories, fellas.
Well, sadly, we've come to the point in our show where we probably need to start
we've been
wrapping
at
it
this an hour and almost 35 minutes. Butch, it went like that.
Wow.
Bang, right through it. I'll remind everybody again that Butch has a book out, High School Dropout, Stories of a Navy Pilot. Outstanding read. I highly recommend go get it. And if you got someone who's an aspiring aviator, maybe, and particularly struggling a little bit with the academics in their life and not sure that they want to do something, I'd recommend this book as a read. That, you know what, obstacles can be overcome, and dropping out of high school ain't the end of the world. If you put your mind to it, you can get where you want to go. So, really good read. So, thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you for your service, sir.
Yeah. Thank you for your service, Butch.
You guys as well. It's been fun.
We appreciate it. It has been fun.
Yeah.
We need
Now
to
I'm
get
looking for
a.
real job.
Say again?
I said now I'm looking for a real job.
No, there's that, right? So
There's all that.
We-
But yeah.
Hey, while we're thanking people, let's thank all of our veterans.
exactly. We need
Thank
to
you
get
for serving our country, and thank you to the families that support them.
Absolutely, man. I'll tell you, families are a big deal. I don't know how. I have no idea how they survived what we went through. All the guys that were married with kids, and it was. I mean, it was. Sometimes
There's a lot
hard
more
on-
sacrifice going on the home front than people seem to
Oh,
be
man.
aware. So,
Yeah, it was hard on me at times. I can't imagine what they went through.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to get a couple other thank yous out there. First and foremost, Dave Hamilton over at backbeatmedia.com, who does all the advertising for this show and has his own shows, the Mac Geek Gab, the Gig Gab for musicians, and the Business Brain for entrepreneurs. If you have a show and want some advertising, reach out to backbeatmedia.com and see if they can't help you find a fit for your show. So,
We have a glossary. If you heard a term and you don't know what it means, check out the glossary. And if it's not in the glossary, well, you need to get a hold of Sticks. You can get a hold of Sticks at sticks@sothereiwas.us. I say Sticks because you could email Repeat and I, but Sticks is actually the brains of the operation.
yeah. Sticks at sothereiwas.us. Or, like he said, Fig or Repeat at sothereiwas.us. But if you want a real answer, you know where to go. We're just saying.
Just saying. We're more than happy to answer questions, but if you want a good answer,
Right.
you probably ought to go to Sticks.
Right? You want some of the cool merch that, these hats are great. I'm wearing the polo shirt with the So There I Was logo. Beach towels, bikinis coming up in the summer. Maybe you're in the Southern Hemisphere listening. Time to get yourself a bikini now at sothereiwas.us/merch.
It's a good-looking bikini, man.
Yeah. A couple other people we need to thank. Well, not a couple. There's a whole bunch. And I think at some point in the very near future, we will read all the names again of the people who do it. The people over at sothereiwas.us/Patreon who take their hard-earned money and give it to a couple of numbskulls like us.
Yeah. It's very humbling, and we thank you.
Indeed, it does. We do.
It helps us get this show to you.
It does, and we couldn't do it without your support. We really couldn't. It's an expensive proposition, and your help and support is deeply appreciated. So thank you, everyone over at Patreon who's supporting us. A couple other quick thank yous out there. They've been commenting on the YouTube stream and the Facebook stream during the show and providing us with information to put up and questions to ask. Chase Cole is managing our Facebook page. Thank you, Marine. Appreciate all your help and support. Thank you, Sticks, for all you do for us. And to Brad Silcat at bdsaviationphotography.com, who lets us use a lot of his cool images on the show. And then a couple other people we need to thank.
Well, I hear him in the background. Yes, it's the two Air Force F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound good. That's Dos Gringos.
Those gringos. Count them both. Great
Awesome.
guys. Had
Awesome
them on the
music.
show. A lot of fun and a lot of great music. Thank you, gentlemen. So, until next week, what can we give them by way of advice? What do you think, Fig?
Stay safe.
Check 6.
crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
He said it.
It's over.
I'll try it again without the sarcasm.
What?
And we're out.
What was that clip from?
Groundhog Day.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Andy McDowell. Want to try it again without the sarcasm?
That's awesome. All right, so where are we with the upload here? I don't see.
Yeah, we need to do that. And tell you what, folks, I hate to do this to you. It's almost 5 a.m. in Seoul, Korea, so I'm going to cut off the stream and go back to bed real quickly. We may, but probably won't be recording again between now and Christmas. So if not, Merry Christmas, many blessed holidays with family, and thank you for joining us online. Take care. God bless.
See ya.
And